Yo, you're right, guys.
Hello.
Hello. Hello again.
All right, so it's our first alternative special. We decided to do it on is China already at war with the West, or more in particular the US? Um, so it's a bit of a discussion topic, and I think we've all got some points we want to talk about and expand on. So, Cam, do you want to get us started?
Yeah, I can. Um, I've got a few different things that we can talk about, but I'm going to start with something which is actually a threat at the moment, and it's a threat to Taiwan. So I want to talk about what I found about why China actually want Taiwan, and it is more. Although it is a big part of it, it is more than just the fact that they want semiconductors or they want the space of semiconductors. So, as a lot of people already know, but if you don't, Taiwan are the biggest semiconductor exporter in the world. They're huge, and they supply China with nearly all of their semiconductors.
Don't they supply around 80% of the semiconductor market?
Yeah, they literally run it. They own it.
Yeah.
China tried to do semiconductors. I don't know how long ago it was, but failed miserably. But I was interested in. There's obviously got to be more than just semiconductors. You can't just go and take a country just because of one industry that they sort of own. And what it was, I don't know if you guys know, but back in the day when China had the civil war between the People's Republic, I think it was, and the Republic of China. It was like when the CCP came about, they ran the old government out, but Taiwan was part of China, but they ran them all the way down to Taiwan, and that's where they sort of like backed away and sort of escaped onto Taiwan. So China have always identified Taiwan as always being their property. But it's vice versa the other way around. So Taiwan will look at China as being their property. So they're both. It's not sort of. There's no peace there because they both feel as if they should own the other. And the more advanced Taiwan get with semiconductors and the facts of their geographic location becomes more and more important for China. It gives them sort of more of a reason to take over Taiwan. But that war happened in was it like 1920s or 1930s?
A while back.
Yeah, I think it was around 1920s. I think.
Yeah, well, it was when the CCP came into power,
Yeah.
and yeah, that would have been because they just had their 100th year anniversary thing. Did you remember watching that in 20 whatever? Did you see any of it? They had some mad 100th anniversary party. Not a party, but a massive show.
What was this around China?
It was in China, yeah.
In China.
About celebrating the CCP being in control for 100 years. It's just what you expect a communist party sort of show to be like. So yeah, I know it's going to be quite scary if China go for Taiwan because a lot of countries don't want them to have Taiwan. It might be because of the semiconductor business. We don't want China to. I know the West and US definitely don't want China to have that sort of power, but it does fit in with their 2025 plan to have semiconductors or power over it. But then the other side of it is a geographic location. I think they need more sort of exposure to the Pacific.
Yeah, the ocean.
Yeah, and I think it's Korea, Japan, Taiwan, and then there's the Philippines, which is the wall which is stopping China having access to that ocean. Which
and the US have naval bases on all of those.
Yeah, they've got good connections with them.
Yeah,
all four of them.
Japan is basically like there's areas in Japan where there's just US people living, and it's just massive US naval bases, and they're all US people that live around there.
Oh, right.
So like they use Japan as a really like strategic country.
Yeah.
They nuked the shit out of them as well in World War II. And now Japan are letting them build naval bases on them, but I guess they've kept them safe from China.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of reasons with Japan, because obviously, in Korea, especially with Korea, because they serve the West with a lot of technology, like a shitload of technology. And that's what, I mean, sort of brings us to the question of the war between US and the West. We're not looking at it as a World War II type scenario. It's a different type of war, and with the advancements in technology and moving into the digital age, which we're in now, this is the different type of war that we're seeing, and that's what we're going to obviously delve into today. But they're still wanting to use old school war to take over Taiwan. But then it's whether or not, I think when I was researching Taiwan, one of a question someone posed in one of the comments which struck me is, the real question is, it's not whether China can take Taiwan, because they can, even though Taiwan have been setting up defense ever since they got pushed there. But the question was, how much is China prepared to lose in order to win the takeover of Taiwan? And I think that's what the question is. They can do it, but as soon as they make that move, US is going to get involved, Australia is going to get involved, Japan's going to get involved. I don't know about the Philippines, but they probably...
The Pacific will get involved in some way.
Countries which you just don't know whether they're going to get involved are going to get involved. But then,
I think once China make that move, then it's not just the US, it's the NATO as well. Like, so you've got all the European countries involved in that.
Yeah.
Then you've got the surrounding countries that have around China that have influence from the West, such as, like you mentioned, Japan, Korea. It's pretty much China. At the moment, the only allies they really have are Russia, Iran, and they're trying to build that sort of influence in Asia, in Africa. So once, I don't think they're in a position at the moment to go for Taiwan, like have a hot war with Taiwan, because they've not got enough global influence. Think about all these developed countries turning on China, then it's China, they've lost already, really. So I know China, they've invested a lot of money into Africa. It's quite mad what they've done. So they've invested all this money into Africa, as like got these African countries in debt, and then they're exploiting these African countries for their resources. So they're building like railroads and all this infrastructure for African countries to use. But then they're saying, oh, but now we have access to your resources. But with that debt, as you probably know, it gives people power over the other person.
Leverage.
Think about a loan shark. So you go to a local loan shark, you get 100k from him, and next minute knocking at your door asking for 100k if you don't give it him. Like, they've got some sort of control over you.
Leverage.
That's what China are. They're just loan sharks in that situation.
The thing is, what you mentioned about the borders, though, Cam, is in the past, China have been vulnerable from the borders. So don't you think getting more control in the Pacific is always in the back of their mind to protect themselves from the naval bases that Aron did mention?
Yeah.
With territory, do you feel like it's always in the back of their mind, or do you feel what Aron mentioned about getting more global influence? What do you reckon would be a priority in their shoes?
I think if by them having, because if you look at, for example, the US, why they've done so well is because of their geographic location. They're quite lucky in the terms of the location that they're in. Like they're sort of ocean to ocean in terms of their
they're
border.
away from sort of the rest of the world.
Yeah, where everything else is sort of crammed. You're all sort of like crammed in, and you're getting in each other's way, and people want a bit of this border, and they want to extend this border further, and it just causes minute little arguments or disagreements. Same with whatever's going on there with India as well. And it just creates this hostile environment. Like the Middle East is bad as well for it, where US have been sort of okay because of their geographic location. I think once China take Taiwan, they'll have obviously or if they do go and take Taiwan, they'll have that ocean. They'll have perfect transport lines, perfect naval bases to sort of protect them more. And I think by having take Taiwan and just upgrading their geographic location in terms of the oceans will actually put a marker for them against the whole world to say we are the superpower that they want to be.
And that will be in line with their 2049 plan of becoming the global superpower that they, allegedly want to be.
Yeah.
But on that like global superpower front, I mean, the only reason it's being fussed about is because the US don't want them to be a global superpower, which is fair enough.
By 2049, they don't just want to be a global superpower; they want to be the global leaders.
Global, yeah.
So they want to be
what everyone is.
They want to be US in 2049. There's a lot to go into with what you've just said. I'm just trying to think what angle to go at now. I don't know whether to talk a bit more about US or go into the South China Sea a bit, but I think I'll save the South China Sea.
Let's go into the China Sea. Yeah, keep it.
Are you going to go to China Sea? I was going to go talk about the US. But, all right.
We can go. The US is going to be quite a discussion. So China Sea, right, geographically close.
We've been talking about the geographical position of Taiwan. As you probably know already that China have been building sort of man-made islands and putting naval bases on them.
Yeah.
In the South China Sea. So at the moment, China feel very vulnerable with their geographical position and the amount of naval bases the US has in the Pacific.
Yeah.
So they've been investing all this money in building these sort of artificial islands, and it's illegal what they've been doing. It breaks like international laws. But China are basically saying they're building these islands and they're saying this is our island, and then that's all they're saying. They're not disputing anything. They're saying we've claimed this territory. They're not going in it aggressively.
It.
They're just saying that we've built this, like this is our territory, and then that's it. And there's no more discussion about it. Nobody's stepping up to them and saying no, you shouldn't be doing this. Which it's.
Do you feel like it's a fear thing, or do you feel like it's more of a political thing that they're not addressing the issues?
I think it's a lot of things. I think developed countries are scared to go to war. So if it does escalate to that level, then that's the last thing a developed country wants, because war causes devastation. Like, it's going to knock a country back decades in the past. Like, when we're in a time now where we're advancing and we want to continue on that timeline. So war is just going to sort of add a massive hiccup into it. And I think as well, China's got the biggest market in the world, so there's a lot of money that's going around changing hands. You can see it already with Disney and how they sort of bend over backwards for Chinese demands.
Yeah,
because they know if they're not in that market, they're not making blockbuster movies that are earning them like billions of dollars more than what it would if China wasn't part of that. So I think it's very money motivated, and as you can see in the US, corporations and government are becoming sort of you feel like they could becoming one, because there's so much corruption there at the moment. So the government
they have to work together.
Yeah, so then you see in the US government bending over for the corporations who are bending over for China. And then in that kind of situation, it's like you might think the US are weak, but it's all, in my opinion, I think it's all to do with greed and
Yeah.
Sort
It
of.
all equates to a dollar sign at the end.
And I think China have noticed this, and they know they can ask these corporations to sort of do whatever they want because they know they've got the biggest market in the world.
Yeah.
They know how much money. A lot of China has moved out from poverty into the middle class. The middle class they like to spend money, especially new money.
Yeah.
And they like to buy European brands, American brands, all this stuff coming in from the West. They don't really buy Chinese, but when I was in China, everyone had iPhones, and if you had like a Chinese phone, they'll think of you as sort of less of a person.
Yeah. It's very status. There's a big status culture over there.
Yeah. And they're all like
Yeah.
Gucci handbags and Louis V handbags, and they're driving BMWs, Audis, Mercedes, and it's all to do with status.
Yeah.
So,
Status quo. Sticking to the status quo.
and I think the Chinese government are using that to sort of their advantage, and they're not too concerned about Chinese consumers not buying their products. They know that if Chinese consumers are buying Western products, that means China have got control
They've got the power.
over Western corporations.
Mm.
And I just wanted to touch on that point, Aaron, because have you guys watched the Joe Rogan episode where I don't know, I can't remember what exactly the guy's name's called, but where he talks about American businesses being controlled in China and the problem with Nike and H&M with their cotton inquiry. This is where it gets a bit controversial. Do you guys remember that episode? Or have you watched it?
No. What was the name of the guy he was interviewing?
I can't remember, but there was a topic that it talked about how American businesses are controlled in China. And basically, Nike and H&M, they just launched an inquiry into where Chinese cotton, where it comes from, if it's induced by forced child labor or whatever. And basically what China did is they just boycotted Nike and H&M's company in China. And the thing is in China is they don't need to convince people. Like with a boycott, say it's here or the US, you need to convince people, don't you? You need to get people to believe in your idea. But the thing is in China, with how powerful the people are at the top, if they say there's a boycott and boycott this company, there's going to be a boycott no matter what people think. And basically Nike and H&M's basically market share in China is close to nothing now, just because they just launched a simple inquiry, just asked China a question, and China didn't like that question, and that's basically what happened.
That is the power that China have then right now is actually kind of mental.
It's scary, very scary.
And I think like the Chinese government, because it's a dictatorship, from recent news as well with the sort of lockdowns that have happened, I feel like they don't care for their population as much as Western governments do. So if their population were to complain about something, say, I don't know, oh, we like H&M, don't boycott it. Chinese government would just be like, oh no, whatever, we're doing this. And if they were to ban all Western things, if they said, right, no more Western products being sold in China now, the Chinese government would do that and they wouldn't think twice about it.
Yeah.
Whereas in the West, if we said no more Chinese products, it's going to be hard times for the people because China obviously produce a lot of our shit like really cheap.
Yeah.
It's going to be hard times for the population. So the Western governments would never say no more Chinese products.
Yeah.
Because they care too much about the population. I don't know if you can say care too much, but it's sort of, we discussed it a little bit before, Cam, and I think we said we'll save it for the podcast, about would you rather be a Chinese citizen or a Western citizen? Like China seems to have a plan, a long-term plan, and they want to be the global leaders by 2049. Is that something like you would prefer as a citizen, or would you prefer living in the freedoms of the West?
Do you want the power or do you want the freedom? That's the main question.
You said you were sort of sitting on the fence a little bit.
I'm sitting on the fence in the sense that I would definitely rather be Western at the moment, even though the West is seeing, especially US, is seeing some radical decline. But I'm more on the fence of when we first spoke about doing this subject for the special and we went away to research. I was looking up all this stuff thinking, oh, China doing this, that's so fucked up. China are doing that, that's so fucked up. But then I got to a point where whilst I was looking at it, it sort of all made sense. Like they're strict. The governments there, that CCP, they're strict. They've got a goal that they want to get to, and they'll get to it by any means necessary. Now they are doing some unethical. Oh, define unethical, but they're doing some unethical practices, which is inhumane, which I would say is unethical. But then other things.
I think inhumane's worse than unethical. I think it's like
that's what I mean. That's what I would say is the unethical part of it. Other things, which is just rules that have been enforced, it's not necessarily unethical. They're just going against the rules because if you actually look at the world, yeah, rules are enforced, but they're only been enforced by someone. Like, rules are there to be broken.
yeah.
So I get what they're doing. That's what it is. I don't know if I agree with it or not because I understand this 2025 plan. I mean, okay, an example of what is considered unethical, but I would say really is more a bit cheeky and strategic, is they are being accused by America of stealing technology advancements. So they're not innovative. They take Western innovations, replicate them, and manufacture them cheap, sell them back to America, whatever. But they also steal innovations, and it drives their sort of not their economy forward, but it drives the innovation of their community forward. But it's all stolen. All of the ideas of stuff stolen. Look at what they that thing about going to space. It was British. It was British innovation of going to space to steal the solar from the sun, to gain power from the sun.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say these things are unethical. They're just fucking rude. It's a shit thing to do. But at the end of the day, if they're trying to advance as a country and become a dominant power, which they have all right to do, because why are they just going to sit in the shadows of the US all the time? They're going to want to. It's competitive. It's not businesses. They're trying to be the best. Yeah. So that's where I'm on the fence. Is like what they're doing is not technically it's not wrong, or there's nothing wrong with it. It's just it is bad on for the Western culture.
Like I've thought about this in the past. Is sort of what China's doing. Is it a good strategy for a government to sort of do? And it's worked amazingly for China, like since the 80s. 40 years have gone by and they're second richest economy in the world.
Yeah.
Probably soon to be the first. But like there's quite a few points here. So basically, like you said, they've stolen innovations from the West. Those innovations have only come around because of the West's freedoms.
Yeah.
If the West didn't have those freedoms and they were run strict like China, it wouldn't be innovative.
No creativity is allowed then.
Yeah, like in China, people are like robots to a certain extent.
Yeah.
Where thinking outside the box is a big no. And in the West, thinking outside the box is sort of promoted. Oh, well, it feels like it's getting less and less promoted, but it used to be very promoted.
Yeah.
And I think with thinking outside the box, a lot of bad stuff happens as well with thinking outside the box. Like there's crimes, organized crimes.
Yeah.
Like people bend the rules one way to make it work for them. And there's a lot of bad stuff, but then there's also a shitload of good stuff, which is what's made the West what it is today. and China trying to eradicate the bad stuff through their social credit system it's getting rid of the bad stuff, but then it's also putting a ceiling on the good stuff that can come out.
Yeah. You need things to get
outside the box.
It's because anything works as like a yin. I've gone on about this before to you, but things go on in a yin yang sort of way. Things have to get bad for other things to get good. It has to, or else they're going to put this system in, this social credit system, to keep everything, as you said, a ceiling. Once they hit that ceiling, but they've got the credit score in there, that's what they want. They want everyone to be robotic and work in a single-minded way, because they've got this strategy of stealing innovations from other people. So they don't need to waste their money on research and development innovations if other countries are doing it and they found a very easy way just to replicate it. But what they have seen with America, if you look at things like the BLM protests and riots, and when Trump supporters flooded the Capitol, that's all happening because they're not strict enough on the West, on their citizens. They allow for this stuff, but then it's like, well, you should allow for it, because if you don't, then we're all just sort of prisoners in the country.
Yeah.
Because that's what all the citizens of China look like to me, is just prisoners in the country.
Yeah, they're just stuck in a box.
Yeah.
And when I was in China and I was talking to like my Chinese friends, I did sort of get the sense that they were slightly naive in some senses, because they've not experienced things that we've experienced. Like we see the bad, we see the good, we see it all. And this was in 2015. At the moment, I feel like the West is starting to go down a route China's going down. Obviously, it's not that extent yet, but think about 5 years ago. Like, when was the mainstream media in discussion? It was a little bit, but not to the extent it is today.
Yeah.
Anything you sort of reading from the mainstream media now, you're just questioning. Which in China, like, 100% that it's just government led.
Yeah.
It's their propaganda for the Chinese population to know about, and that's it.
Yeah. Well, the thing about what I've noticed about China is their government don't hide things as much as the Western government do. The Western government, if they're doing practices which are considered normal in China, they would hide that from our population to prevent uproar.
Yeah, but the Chinese people will sort of just agree with it.
Yeah, because the government just say, yes, this is what we're doing. If you don't like it, then I'll chuck you in jail or whatever. Prison.
Yeah, and bringing this back to the US, you mentioned like BLM and storming the Capitol. I had a good point on this. I feel like at the moment in the US, I feel like the way China are going to attack the US is from inside the US.
Yeah, that's a good point.
And the US is sort of, at the moment, feels like it's eating itself from the inside out. Like, I listen to some US podcasters, Tim Pool, and he talks about civil war quite often. And he talks about it so like relaxed as well. Like, it's just, he thinks it's like definitely going to happen, which I think is a fucking scary thought. Civil war in the US.
With guns.
That would bring down the Western world.
Yeah, they're far too advanced to have a civil war. There's way too much to lose there.
So,
a civil war with guns too.
What would you say? Sorry, my internet's gone a little bit.
Do you reckon a civil war with the gun laws that they have in America is going to be crazy? Because everyone's going to be able to get onto guns too. And it's not going to be just like a protest war. It's actually going to be like bloodshed war.
Yeah. That's the thing about Americans, Westerns anyway, is it'll start off peaceful, a peaceful protest. That's what any of these protests that they're having could. I think this is what Aron's trying to say as well, is that any of these protests that they're having, whether it be going to the Capitol and doing what they did, which was a bit more than a protest, but with the BLM, is they keep having these things and keep having them. They're only one step away from it turning into a civil war because they've got all of these weapons at their arsenal. They've got so much aggression in them. It just takes one person to shoot. But with the George Floyd getting murdered, that was so close for them to have some sort of civil war.
Induce it in some way. Yeah. Welcome back, AK. Is your internet all right?
Yeah, I don't know what happened. It just booted me off and then came back on.
All right.
It's fine now. Smooth again.
Carry on with your point because we were having a back and forth, but let's continue on with your point because I feel like I wanted to address something.
Yeah.
As you were leaving, I was saying that the West is way too advanced to have America's way too advanced to have a civil war right now.
Yeah, like a civil war, I think would be a lot worse than a war with another country. Civil war is just gonna rip the US apart. Without the US, what's NATO?
Yeah,
like pretty much nothing. Like Trump, when he was in power, he was telling other NATO nations to stop spending their own money, building their own military, and stop relying on us. Countries didn't listen to him, and then this war kicked off with Ukraine. And then they started spending the money on the military to protect themselves, especially in Europe because it's around our doorstep. So if a very clever way for China to take Taiwan and take out the US is by helping America
destroy itself,
start a civil war.
Yeah, I don't even know if China needs our help. I think they can just sit back and play a waiting game.
I feel like, though, what happens in America when things are kicking off, that China will just throw a bit of fuel on the fire through using social media.
Yeah, TikTok.
Yeah, TikTok. Even Twitter. They might use, because I've heard about, I don't know how true they are, but China having these sort of centers where they have people who set up fake Twitter accounts and tweet just like bullshit propaganda or egg on these arguments and make things worse on a social level. Apparently China and Russia are both doing this. But you can see from a strategic point of view, it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
And China is so shut off digitally. Like all their digital assets are China's, whereas the US are so open digitally. It's so easy for China to do that.
Yeah.
And I think with Russia and this Ukraine war, they've sort of closed themselves off now as well through Western sanctions and all that. Like, I feel like Russia have just thought, all right, we'll just behave like China and just close ourselves off. We're still making a lot of money from selling gas and oil. So they're not too concerned about closing themselves off and just filtering out a little bit of what they need to reap the benefits, which is pretty much what I'm trying to do. But so I feel like from a strategic point of view, it's a great idea for China to do that.
Do you feel like they have the power to do it in terms of a cyber war? So in the past, I know there's been Russian hacks in the US on power grids, and that's just led to social downfall. But do you reckon with China's infrastructure, do you reckon they could induce a civil war maybe just by hacking, say, like a power grid in the US, and that leads to like a knock-on effect, like fuel can't get to the fuel stations.
If China did that, the US would know China have done that, and then that's going to start a war.
Do you think that would just directly start a war?
The US would do it back to China.
I heard somewhere, I don't know how true this is, but it sounds true, that big countries, developed countries with developed infrastructures and internet basically, the developed ones have the power to shut down another country's internet.
Yeah. There was a documentary Jake Tron did.
Was that what it was on? I think it was.
About cyber warfare.
Yeah.
And he basically talks about it like the Cuban Missile Crisis.
Oh yeah, you were telling me about this.
What was that?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think I watched a video when I was back in Preston, so I probably told you about it after.
Yeah.
So basically, it's like they're treating it like nuclear war. One country doesn't want to be the first country to press the button. And it's the same with shutting off the internet, because if the internet gets shut off, everything is connected to the internet. Your transport links, your banks, supermarkets.
Your access to the news. Your access to the alternative.
But even like from basic necessities like travel, eating's probably the main one.
Yeah.
And your bank account.
Heat problems, because if you go and eat out, like they're gonna have heat issues and they can't store their food, so you can't even eat, really.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, but if you can't buy food if you can't have access to your bank, then you're not gonna be eating out.
Yeah, exactly.
No one's got no cash.
Yeah.
Literally, like you're not gonna be able to do anything, and we're so dependent. We don't realize how much we take it for granted, but we're so dependent on technology and the internet that might as well lead to a civil war.
It's integrated into our life. If we don't have it, so many people will die, and so many people it'll just turn into a what's it called, where you just every man for themselves.
Yeah, it'll shut the country down.
Yeah,
but no country will press that button, because it's the same as them dropping a nuke on a country. Or maybe a little less destructive, but it's
we'll just die a slower death.
Yeah.
We'll suffer.
You die a fucked up death if you get it.
The nuke.
Yeah, if the nuke lands like directly like where you live, then you're gonna die straight away. But then people in 100 miles away will die slower.
Yeah, but still faster than if internet was shut off. It would just be.
Yeah, it'll just turn into
start murdering people.
Yeah, it'd just be anarchy.
That's a messed up thing. I feel like people would die a more sufferable death without internet rather than the effects of a nuke. That's so messed up if you think about it.
Yeah, and then, but I don't think China would do that.
It's just mad that they have their...
Because the US would know China have done it.
And retaliate.
The way China are orchestrating this now is so good, because they can just do it, like, and nobody will know what's going on, because it's so subtle, and they don't mind playing a long game. It'll take longer. Obviously, if they shut off the internet in America, or they shut down the power grid, then it's got an instant effect. But with what they're doing now, it's such a subtle way of doing it, and they're playing a long game. Like, they don't mind just implementing it slowly. They've been doing it for 40 years, and look what they've become. Like, now they're reaching the finish line, so they're not really going to rush it. They're just going to keep doing it slowly.
Yeah. Well, since we're talking about social media, I did find something which was quite interesting about TikTok.
I think got
just a bit of a fact. You can discuss it if you want. So, if you're under the age of 14 and under in China, your TikTok access is restricted to 40 minutes a day. You're shown educational videos, patriotic videos, as opposed to anyone that could sort of provide an influence on you. You're not shown any of that. And your social media shuts off at 10 p.m. and turns back on at 6 a.m. Every day.
Hours. Did you watch that Joe Rogan episode? Just Tristan Harris, I think.
Oh, was it on that?
Yeah, he explains it.
He talks about it on that, yeah.
All right.
That's why I was proper happy that you brought it up.
Yeah.
Well, this was off an article online, so maybe that guy got it.
Oh, sweet. So that like expands it. So that like kind of backs it up that he knows what he's talking about if it's been covered in.
Yeah, I remember that episode that came out of last year, that didn't it? After the Social Dilemma.
Yeah.
He was the guy who created Social Dilemma, wasn't
he? Yeah.
He's like a technology ethicist or something. Like he knows a lot about tech and social media. It's mad. Tristan Harris. Go check it out, the Joe Rogan episode if you've not watched it.
Are you plugging Joe Rogan? No, joking. He's a good guy.
But they don't have TikTok either, do they, Cam? They have something called, is it Douyin?
Yeah, it's TikTok. It's just a different name for it.
Yeah.
Just their Chinese name.
Yeah, and then you look at the TikToks of 14-year-olds here, where it's just all
dancing,
shit videos, dancing, Billy Mega Chippy.
Yeah, because with China, they don't want to bring up their youth to be influencers, do they? They want to bring them up to be like smart professionals that do like
engineers.
Engineers, doctors.
They want to be able to fight in the military if it comes to it. The US, most of England, the West, most of, I'd say even from 14 to our age, or even above our age, we're not cut out to fight in a war anytime soon.
We're not prepared for like the worst of the worst. The West isn't prepared for the worst of the worst.
Even physically, I mean mentally, we're not prepared for
it. And mentally, that's the main thing.
It's in China, like the people will die for their flag, whereas
proper patriotic.
In England, you see an England flag and you automatically think like EDL or negative connotations with it, which I think is pretty fucked up, to be fair, because it's a country we've been brought up in, it's a country that we live in, it's a country we love, like, but the flag is like...
Well, yeah, we've talked about this before, and I remember when we talked about this, I looked it up not long ago on why it's got such negative... There's such a negative appearance of our flag. And it leads back to the football culture that we have. Our flag is predominantly used for football.
Hooliganism.
In hooliganism, yeah. So that's why it's got such a negative outlook on our flag. It's because that's the only time you see it. Whereas in China or whatever, they own, or as they say, most other countries, they talk in front of their flag as if they're proud.
Yeah,
whereas in England, it's some fucking guy drinking some Stella and chucking his bottle.
I think since July 6th as well in US, I think the US flag's been seen as more of a what right-wingers use, and it's got that sort of connotation with it now.
Yeah.
So I feel like over there it's even starting to get negative connotations with it too, which it's not. I don't think it's good for the country. It's like citizens in the country should love the country.
Yeah,
and they should be willing to do whatever they can to keep the country prosperous. But in the West, it feels like more and more people are not.
Yeah, because I remember when Russia invaded Ukraine to begin with, and he was in the pub or whatnot talking about this happening. That question got brought up: are you ready to fight in the war? And I'd say most people are, am I fuck fighting in the war? Most people are saying that they're not going to fight.
I thought about this, and I thought I'd do it.
You'd fight
if it came on our doorstep.
If it came to us, you would fight.
Yeah, I'm not being sent out to fight for another country.
Yeah,
but if it's on our doorstep, I would fight.
Patriotic.
I'm not fighting to invade another country either. If it's like here and people are attacking us
to protect your grounds, it's like you would your home.
Yeah,
your house. You would do it the same way.
I think I would too. I think I'd fight for my country.
Depends who we're fighting against, doesn't it?
So you would.
I just thought of it like so many people died in World War II to protect.
Yeah.
West, like the values that the UK had.
Yeah, but remember as well that they had Winston Churchill in charge. We currently have Boris Johnson.
What's up with Boris Johnson?
He's not going to have some strategic plan on how to help us.
He just sort his hair out before he does that. Jesus Christ.
We'll.
But anyway, let's get back to China.
Has anyone got any other points they want to bring up?
Yeah, well, we were talking about South China Sea, and then I think we just went on some crazy tangent.
Not on a west tangent there, though.
I didn't get any of my points out. I got one point out saying that China felt vulnerable.
How about so much since then? Jeez.
So I was saying that China feel vulnerable because the US Navy's a lot bigger and stronger than China's. So they've been building these
Islands,
strategic islands, to sort of increase their influence in the South China Sea. So I'll show you a little pic.
And is this part of their 2025 plan, or is this part of their global leader plan to protect themselves against a naval base?
Well, I think it all falls like sort of hand in hand. The 2025 plan sort of a step, and then the 2049 one's like the bigger goal. So these are all the US bases that are surrounding China. So they pretty much got them sort of cornered off.
Yeah, literally.
Yeah.
Like, it goes as far back as, I think that's Hawaii.
Hawaii is around there, isn't it?
Yeah.
And I think that might be like Fiji.
A big amount of water in between these.
Yeah. So they've got like loads condensed up here. Japan. Do you know what I was saying before? Japan's full of US Navy bases.
Yeah.
That's Japan. That's South Korea.
Yeah.
And that's
Got one in India, and then is that Pakistan? They've got another one there.
I'm not sure where that is.
That's crazy. And if they wanted to retreat, the only way they're pushed towards is west. They can't go east.
Look at the Philippines as well, full of them.
Yeah, no, they literally can't retreat east, and if they wanted to, if they're desperate.
So Taiwan, I think.
Taiwan's the easiest move for them, but I'm not.
That's that, isn't it? Where your cursor is. That's Taiwan, isn't it?
Taiwan, yeah.
Yeah, I think that's. I'm pretty sure that's Taiwan. I recognize the shape.
So I'm guessing this one might be Hong Kong.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
So you can see, like, they've literally got them surrounded.
Yeah, literally.
Hong Kong, yeah, that is right. And then Taiwan.
I thought it was just an interesting picture. So it puts it into perspective how many naval bases that the US have around China. So what China are doing on these islands as well is they're building hypersonic missiles. Do you know what they are?
I know what hypersonic
missiles.
means,
So I was reading about hypersonic missiles when Russia invaded Ukraine.
I know what hypersonic is, and I know what missiles are. So.
Yeah, I think they can launch a nuke to London within 5 minutes. It'll get to London in 5 minutes.
What?
So China have been building these hypersonic missiles on these little islands that they've been building, probably facing east towards US.
Yeah.
But another thing, when I was looking into this, I just wanted to see what China's military spending was and is. So at the minute, they're spending $293 billion a year. This has tripled in 10 years. So in 2010, I think it was almost tripled. I think it was like 92 billion off the top of my head.
Oh, right. Okay.
And it's increased by 60 billion. So 3 years ago, they were spending 60 billion less.
So they're obviously doing advancements in all sections of, because they're doing advancements in military from that spend, you can tell. Advancements in tech from the shit that they're robbing off everyone. Advancements with controlling their community, the civilians. So they're advancing on all different levels. I mean, I think Jack, you was asking about their 2025 plan, but what they do is every 5 years they come out with these 5 year plans. So they have one big goal, and then they take these little 5 step intervals to reach that goal. So at the moment they're doing the Made in China 2025, which is to take the negativity of low shit Made in China products to flip that and be Made in China means high quality, good, strong, reliable products. But yeah, they're
links to their long-term plan.
Mm.
Yeah, it links to their long-term plan because they sort of their philosophy is like making small progress, right? Whereas the US, they take more of a targeted approach and just go like balls deep into one area. But with China, they always plan things in a lot of detail, do it very slowly to make small progress to a very big picture, then they execute that big picture. So I feel like there's a difference in philosophies, which leads to how China expand and how the US expand, or how the West expand.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think like with the US, a lot of their influence came through the power of their military.
Yeah.
So
when their power of military was the number one sort of thing to have.
Yeah.
Well, it still is number one. I'll just get to that. So, like I said, China's at 293 billion a year. In comparison, America's spending 801 billion a year on their military.
Oh, right.
So, in military capability, like from a military perspective, China's still way behind the US. The US have been doing this for a long fucking time as well.
Yeah, for decades.
The US have been in wars recently, so their military are used to planning strategies and know how to fight a war.
Yeah.
Whereas China haven't been in a war since probably when they fought Japan. I think that was probably the last war.
World War II, 1939.
Have a look.
I don't want to butcher my history. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
It's having 1937 to 39. But yeah, them fighting Japan was the last time, right? They've actually been in a full-scale war.
Chinese forces invaded northern Vietnam on the 6th of March 1979. That was their last war.
Really? Oh, okay. I thought World War II was a cut-off. That's interesting. But they are still behind it. That's your point, isn't it?
Yeah, they're miles behind. And I remember when I was looking into hypersonic missiles, people were saying that the US and the West don't have hypersonic missiles. I don't believe that for a minute, though.
They were saying what?
They don't have hypersonic missiles. But I don't believe that. And
I feel like they've probably had them for longer than China.
Probably.
Yeah. And one thing I read is the US military are 25 years ahead of technology we're seeing now. So a lot of our technologies come from military spending. They do all the R&D, and then the technology gets cheap enough to pass down to the consumer. So they're saying 25 years is fucking insane.
Yeah, because imagine what they can do now. What we know they can do now is already insane. What they have the capabilities to do now is insane. So 25 years down the line.
25 years ago today, you were just born.
Damn, we're taking it there.
But I mean, there's a point, right, where military and technology come together properly, where the whole war won't require human intervention. It will just be whoever's got the biggest arsenal of technology.
Yeah.
Sort of, more, I don't know what you're going to call it, just the technological military that you're going to have. You're going to have robots the size of fucking buildings.
Yeah, literally.
That's why I think at the moment, China won't have a hot war with Taiwan or with... They just won't get involved with it because I think they know that they won't be able to win that fight.
Yeah, they're not in a fit state.
Do you reckon they'll try and play catch-up in terms of their military operations, China this is? Or do you reckon they keep on advancing what they're good at, so tech in terms of like cyber wars and stuff? or do you reckon they do play catch up and then lead to whatever they do with Taiwan and expanding?
Well, my thinking is China will just want peace so they can carry on developing and carry on pushing. And then when the time's right, they will go for Taiwan when they know America's on its weakest point. And probably it sort of brings us back to the Civil War in America. If that happens, then America's going to be way too preoccupied dealing with its own shit.
Yeah.
That's when China can sort of do what they need to do.
Yeah.
Just waiting for the right time.
Yeah, I think they're just happy to wait.
Well, like you said, they've waited. So what's waiting a little longer? Yeah. In the state that they're seeing it all in now, what is sort of happening around them?
And because they have one government, they don't need to keep chopping and changing like we do in the West.
Yeah.
Because we're in power, like our governments are in power for 4 years. So they make plans for 4 years to keep the citizens happy for 4 years. So then hopefully they get voted in again. Whereas in China, no one gets voted in, so the government...
Yeah, and on top of that, the West, they get voted in 5 years, 4 years, whatever. They do whatever they can do to try and sustain the country. But they sort of set themselves up to line their pockets.
Yeah.
Before they come out.
Always.
It just comes back to greed. But I mean, China are greedy as well, but they're just greedy. They're greedy in terms of power. So they're just power hungry. Whereas the US... I mean, when money's not a factor, because I don't think money's a massive factor for China, and I think it comes down to the fact that it's every 10 years someone gets put in power, but they're all sort of connected anyway. They just sort of take the reins from the last person because that last person's 10 years older or whatnot. Whereas the US they're competing like business. The different parties are competing like businesses.
Yeah.
To win as many voters as you can, and it makes it so just vicious that there's no, I don't know what the word is, there's no standardization to it. It's all over the place.
And what do you feel that's induced by? Do you feel that money, not philosophy of the government comparing the Western CCP in terms of with CCP they're all on one united front, but in the West there's like Republicans versus the Democrats and they need to have their battles and then worry about like China, for instance?
Well, I think on paper it should work because if you're going to look at them as businesses, then a monopoly is never the best problem. Never the best thing to have. It's a problem, which China's got. But then it just takes us back to: is China what China are doing? Is that right or not?
I wouldn't.
It's hard to look at them
like businesses because China are competing with the rest of the world, whereas US, like the parties in the US or in the UK,
competing with themselves.
They're competing with themselves and then trying to compete with the world after that.
Yeah.
Whereas China just solely focused on competing with the world. They're not messing around with all the other in-house politics. So it's like, imagine like Apple competing inside who's going to be CEO for...
Yeah.
That's a good
point.
A
new CEO gets voted and then it happens again a few years later and then they got to do it all again. And then the direction keeps chopping and changing. Whereas China's just like, he's our CEO. This party runs us and this is what we need to go and do.
Yeah.
And just got laser focus.
And that's why they are able to have this long-term plan.
Yeah.
Whereas the West can't put these long-term plans in. Look at the fucking state of the net zero thing. It's just...
Yeah. Because when I was on my doing a cybersecurity course, I was talking to the tutor there, and he said when Labour were in power, they built all these like massive business parks and places for like businesses to go and work and all that stuff. But he goes, since when David Cameron came in power, he stopped funding it, and the buildings are just laid dormant.
Yeah, because that's not aligned to his goals. So
yeah, so like the Labour are spending this money, and then the Tories come in and they're not even using it. So then they sold the property to their company, ended up buying one of the properties and built a server farm in there. But he said they got the property dirt cheap because of it.
Yeah.
Just capitalising on.
It's just a massive waste of money from the government. And he said there's these business parks all around the country that are just not being used.
But they spent tons of money because it's just all misaligned, isn't it?
Yeah.
Okay, I wanted to ask you a question, Aaron, since you shared your screen. I saw your tabs open. So, have you done much on Nixon?
Not a lot. I did a bit of a reading on it.
Do you want to give us? Well, I've not done anything on Nixon. Did you do anything on Nixon, Joe?
No, I did not.
No, so I'd like.
Yeah. So what I mainly know is he basically gave birth to China. He made them what they are today.
Right.
So in 1972, he visited China. China was very poor, a lot of poverty at the time. There's a lot of starvation, famine. Like it just wasn't a nice. It's probably like how you'd imagine North Korea today.
Yeah.
So when he visited China, he struck a deal with them. They said they'll open up their borders for exportation.
There's a trade deal that they put.
Yeah, a trade deal. Whereas Americans would benefit from cheap goods. That's where the made in China products came from.
Right.
As I was growing up, I think every one of our toys was made in China.
So it was Nixon's idea to turn China into a factory.
Yeah.
For America.
For America, for the developed.
Yeah.
So yeah, then obviously that's what started China off. They were able to use their cheap labor, make some money by selling cheap, basically tat to the Americans, and the rest of the Western world. We'll happily sit there and buy it all because it's dirt cheap. And they develop their economy into what it is today, just based on that deal. One thing I was looking into though is when Mao came into power, he approached the US on several occasions because he wanted to work with them. But the US kept ignoring him. So I think from like the 50s up until 72, the US just ignored him and kept ignoring his request to speak with the president.
And if you gave up at one point, and that's where the CCP started to become more.
So when did they join the WTO, the World Trade Organization? Were they always originally in it?
China.
They joined it at some point, didn't they?
I'm not sure. Let's have a quick look.
Might be making this up completely.
2001.
They did. Oh, 2001.
11th December.
Yeah, but it was founded in 1995. Yeah, they did. I was thinking, did they join it or were they already?
Oh, were they like a founding member?
Yeah. Sorry, I didn't explain that properly. But yeah.
But personally, I don't think Nixon was the best president.
For another video.
He also took the US dollar off the gold standard, which I think was a bad move.
We'll
turned into the shit piece of paper we have today. But I think I don't know.
We'll do it. Well, I think we should do a video on US presidents.
Let's do a video on purely Nixon.
Maybe that could be a documentary.
How long have we been on for?
Just over an hour. Have you got anything that you want to?
Go on, John.
I just think I think you mentioned something about censorship, right, Cam? And you mentioned that the West has more. I don't know exactly how you said it, but you said the West is more censored than China. Do you feel like that's? Do you agree with that 100%, or are you like on the fence about it? About what
The
information?
West is more censored.
Yeah.
No, I'd say defo China are more
Yeah.
censored. Yeah.
Okay.
Do you mean the West is more uncensored?
Maybe it was more uncensored. It was a point that was brought up earlier on. Just wanted to talk more about
Oh, did
that.
I say that the West were more censored? Oh,
No, I don't think
It's
so.
one of them. I think it may be more uncensored.
yeah.
But that leads back to the freedom, doesn't it? And more with China and how the government control their people.
Yeah, it's just that there's like two. They run two completely different ways, and what was like trying to get at is because China are so strict in all of their processes and all of their control, they are managing to fly, not even just excel, they're flying to the top of the world.
Exponential growth in it.
Yeah, which on the other side, on the West, because we're uncensored and we're just in a really weird point where we're uncensored, but some people want to be censored, some people don't want censorship. It's just a fucking mess.
Yeah,
There's a lot of groups in there.
It's a weird one in the West at the moment, because one thing, like, the left for so long have always been against corporations, and only recently they've sort of the roles seem to have reversed, and the right are against corporations or against corporate agendas, and the left are for the corporate agendas. So they're backing corporations more than the right. Whereas before, the left would protest about corporations and say they're greedy and they want all this money and they're controlling the population. But now they're sort of taking the corporation side because they do a lot of like
smoke and mirrors.
Yeah, well, they call it virtue signaling. So it wins over
the left. Or maybe these corporations thought they had control over the right, or they had already won the right. So they started doing some sort of marketing campaigns to win over the left, but in that transition, they have lost the right. Because you can't have both. You can't. There's no way you can have both.
Yeah, you can't have both. Yeah, but I think them winning over the left, because a lot more younger people are left, so they're sort of targeting themselves more towards the younger people.
Yeah. There's more money. They've found that there's more money. Because that's all the corporation's looking for is.
Yeah, because people who tend to be on the right are people who have families, don't have as much disposable income as someone in like the late 20s, early 30s who these days don't have a family yet. So they're just spending the money because they've got no kids to spend it on.
Yeah.
Spend on themselves. I had a point. But I think, that's what I was going to say. I feel like because there's no... In the West, it feels like no one's values or people's values are so like mismatched.
Yeah.
No one's sort of... Everything just feels a bit like lost. No one's got the same set of values, so it's hard to bring a community together to be able to prosper.
Yeah, because even if you're dividing it between the left and the right, even then, all of the right aren't aligned with themselves, and even worse on the left. Like, that's a shit show over there. Yeah,
the left's is crazy, because if you're left and you believe one thing, but then you don't believe another thing a left person says, then they'll basically just cancel you.
Yeah, then you just get hooked, and then they I'm not going to go on a rant about this, but they just bring out new shit and then expect everyone to be up to date with this new shit that they're bringing out. And if you're not up to date and you've not heard about it and you fuck up, then you're a fucking twat.
Yeah.
You don't want the times.
It's like, I was listening to Ricky Gervais's stand-up.
Yeah.
Basically said, like, in 2001, if someone made a tweet, not 2001 because no Twitter.
2010, weren't it?
It might have been 2010. So if someone made a tweet then, and I think he was talking about Chris Rock because he tweeted something about his hoping his son's not going to be gay.
All right.
He said at the time he said it, it wasn't like a bad thing to say at the time because everyone's values have since changed.
Yeah.
Why are people going back to it in 2020 when values have changed and people like society has developed to start understanding and accepting like people are different and people do these things? Why are people going back to 2010 where it was maybe not acceptable to say, but it wasn't sort of frowned upon as much as it is today?
Mm.
And then turn it into a massive deal. Like things change. So then because he doesn't know like if you're going to tweet something today in 10 years time.
Yeah. You could tweet something like, and it's changing that rapidly. You could tweet something which I think you said it was just frowned upon what he tweeted, but you could tweet something today or have tweeted something over the last 2-3 years that's not even frowned upon, but in 10 years time that could bite you in the ass without at that time it even being a problem even in anyone's mind. Exactly,
but it shouldn't really be brought back like that far in the past. Like, what's said is said.
Yeah.
And then
another thing he said in the stand-up, which I thought was, we're going on a massive tangent here and talking about the left, but I just wanted to bring it up.
We'll talk about the West, aren't we? So.
Yeah, I guess. He said people are complaining about the wrong thing. So he'll make a joke about LBGTQ. I don't want to butcher it, so whatever the rest of it is.
IA plus.
Plus, to say plus.
Yeah, plus.
Plus. Is that what you say? Is that what a plus means? Everything else?
I think they ran out of letters.
Oh.
It makes sense.
It's pretty long now, isn't it?
Yeah, there's like a IA now, isn't there? TIA. Well, I do imagine that the plus does mean that it includes everything else, aka.
Yeah, it's LGBTQIA plus.
Yeah.
Okay.
Fucking butcher that again.
So he says like
I forgot already.
He'll make a joke about them, but he'll also make jokes about cancer victims and rape and molesting children. Because no one bats an eyelid when he makes jokes about them. But then as soon as he mentions LBGTQ plus, he gets like bombarded and they're like he's like coming after him with pitchforks. And he's like, how can I say all this other stuff, but then just make one little simple joke about that, and I get it in the neck.
Yeah,
which kind of makes sense, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if it was on that because I've watched it. I don't know if it was on that same one. It might have been something else I've watched. But they said that say you get a non-binary person, for example, they probably just want to be non-binary and be at home relaxing. But all these other people who are not non-binary, not male or female, then I guess they're the ones who are saying that fight in their corner.
Yeah,
but they're not. They're non-binary, which is fine. It's the fact that these other people are fighting for something that's not really. I know it's the writer saying you have to have a gender, but fair enough. They don't want to have a gender. Just leave them in their house to just not have a agenda. Stop fucking putting it all over the TV. But
yeah, it doesn't need to be on our faces.
No, but then I do understand. We've got fucking freedom of speech for people to say, oh, well, actually, it's fucking wrong that what people do say is wrong for them not to have a gender because you're fucking born with a gender. So that's if you got something on your mind, then they're going to say it. because they've come out and said they're non-binary. So I know it's contradicting what I've just said, but
No, it's not contradicting what you're saying. It's basically saying that if that person's got an opinion and says they're non-binary, that's, in my perspective, that's an opinion. Like, that's just how they feel. I don't think it's scientifically. There's two sexes, two genders, male and female.
Here we go.
But it's scientifically proven. These people are arguing with science, but then when the right are arguing with science about COVID and the vaccine, the left are saying, why are you arguing with science? It fucking makes sense.
The thing is, the problem is, in the West, there's so many controversial topics, right? But people tend to focus on what's trending. You know what I mean? So like with BLM, those protests, then they were focused on George Floyd, and that was a problem, obviously, but there's other problems to focus on too. And it's getting controversial now, but I feel like China avoids this with how like they're communist and they don't really deal with that and everyone's on a united front. But I feel like in the West, people need to believe in something socially. And then whatever's trending controversially, that's what people get controversial about, but there's more controversial topics.
Yeah, I think China using this to their advantage because they've all got values instilled in them through the government, whereas our values are all mismatched and everyone's thinking on different wavelengths.
Yeah.
Some wavelengths people think are insane, and then those people who think, and then the people who think those, like, that group's insane, that group think they're insane, and it's just like, how's anyone supposed to get on and try and build a better future for the country if we're all arguing over stupid shit?
I think as well, a lot of it comes back to is sort of like tribal behavior. If you look at China, they've pretty much got their tribe down to a T because they've got a good tribe leader. Whereas in the West, where everything's so open to anyone can lead any tribe, you can't do that in China. You can't open up your own tribe. Probably is people that do it, but you're probably never going to hear about them in a million years.
You get kidnapped by the
Jack Ma.
But then in the West, you get everyone wants to be a fucking tribe leader. So the BLM movement, you had people pushing that, even though I think the leader of it spent their money on something a bit dodgy, I think. But that's another conversation. But I mean, you get all of these different tribes all trying to and no one actually knows where they fit. And then that's why there's so much dispute all over the place, because no one knows where they fit, but they want to fit in a tribe, but none of the tribes 100% sort of agree with them. Yeah. And that's why depression, I know it's sort of infused, or social media adds to this fire loads, but then that's why there's so much sort of depression and mental health issues, is no one's got, and you can't belong anywhere. And even if you do belong somewhere, it's not even going to last a couple of years before it's something else that you need to jump ship over to. So there's nothing you can sort of dedicate yourself to, because of, for example, a lot of people previously dedicated themselves to religion. That's must be on the I don't know figures for sure, but it must be on the decline, because people aren't religious anymore, and they're trying to fill that hole with other tribes to be involved with. But there's nothing strong enough either. Things that are coming out at the moment, they're not strong enough for people to follow. So
they're just temporary. People just jump on a bandwagon, and when that time's up, there's another bandwagon, and it's just jumping from one bandwagon to another.
And it's depressive for people. And then now there's the most people in the West. The most people have started to leave their jobs and move jobs. It's just another sort of branch to. Your job's no longer even your tribe, because they're fucking corporations are fucking you over, and people are starting to realize how fucked up they are. People are turning their backs on that, and a bit of a depressive note to leave on. But that's what I think. That's what a lot of it is, and that's the way the West has just sort of eaten themselves into just. And they'll probably. To be honest, when you talk about having a civil war, say there's two different sides, that's probably something people can cling on to. So people will probably be more inclined to have a civil war because they can actually get behind something, or a war in general. Like they're probably more inclined to get behind something which is slightly resonates to the tribe, that actually has meaning, and you're actually doing something which means something, not jumping on the fucking bandwagon of non-binary and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
There's not much meaning to that. It's just distraction. It's just something to do people can distract themselves with.
An idea of a civil war is it's messed up, it's scary, but I feel like it is imminent at some point, with how the West is sort of declining and measures like that.
Right, yeah. Got any more points?
I was going to talk about COVID.
Oh yeah.
Don't know. Should we? I feel like that what we spoke about then was a good wrap up.
We have been on for about an hour and a half, I'd say, bit below an hour and a half.
Maybe we'll link it back to the question quick, in terms of our opinions.
You want me to conclude it up?
Yeah.
So I think what we just finished on in Cam's last statement kind of concludes whether China is at war with the West. I think they're playing the slow game, which we can see they've got a 2025 plan and a 2049 plan, which 2049's in 32 years. Is my maths right now?
27.
27 years. You got in the mathematician. So a 37-year plan it's a long fucking time for a government to implement the things they want and lead them to be a super the top dog of the world. How fast things are changing, anything can happen in those 37 years.
Yeah.
In the West, we're seeing a lot of social instability at the moment, and we can see things happening which will, in my perspective, will play into China's hands. If a civil war does break out, then I think China are on for a winner. I think Western governments really need to start taking China as a threat.
Which they are starting to do now.
I think they've always seen them as a threat, but I feel like they're missing. We need to get our countries under control and stable if we're ready for China. Otherwise, we're just gonna kill ourselves. China won't even need to come and fight us.
We need a plan.
Yeah, we need a plan. We need good leaders. We live in the UK. We've got Boris Johnson, in my opinion, not a very good leader. In the US, they've got Biden, fucking awful leader. We need some good, solid leaders who are willing to get their hands dirty and pull us out of the mess and get everything back on track. But I don't know. I feel like the political stance in both countries at the moment is it's a bit weird.
It's hard in the West because it's always changing. There's not one consistent leader. Where in China, there's been consistency in leadership, but it's always changing in the West. That's another problem.
But I don't think that's a problem because that's what's made the West so good is democracy.
Yeah.
So instead of there's benefits to both sides.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, exactly.
So we need to get our shit under control a bit better and figure out what direction we need to go in. I think the US mainly need to sort their shit out because they're the fucking superpower. They're the biggest economy in the world. But I feel like there's a lot of problems at the moment in the West. And Russia and China, their people have been through hard times a lot more recent than people in the West.
Yeah.
So their people, if China needs to put their people through hard times again, they're not going to find it as difficult as we would here.
Yeah, because we've been through generations of living at some sort of ease.
Yeah.
Generations. So.
Yeah, it's been since World War II. We've not
coming out of the war. So that generation is now practically disappeared.
Yeah, the majority of them are dead now.
Yeah.
And then the rest of them. What did he say? Hard men make weak men. Weak men make hard men. Or strong men make weak men. Weak men make strong men.
Did you say this to me? No. My barber said this to me.
All right.
Did he?
Because I was talking to him about obviously being, what would you class us as, third generation Indians in England? Third generation.
Second, I'd say.
He's first. No, he's
second. We're third.
We're third. Yeah.
Yeah. All
so
right.
With him being second and then his parents being first, that's what his dad says to him. Because his dad lived, definitely with being an immigrant, lived a completely different life to what he's living.
Yeah. But I think it's a good phrase.
Yeah, it is.
All right. Anyway, anything else, chatting for you to say?
No, I feel like it's mostly been covered. I feel like it's debatable whether they're at war, but I feel like China's just so focused on themselves that they don't really have time to deal with these things between the West or during the competition. So I feel like that's my take on that. They're just really focused on themselves and they've got exponential growth because of it. So, yeah.
All right. So we wrap this one up. I'll just say before we do, I feel like from doing my research, I had a lot of I had a wide spread of information, but I didn't have much depth to it. But I feel like even just starting from a tip of a certain topic and having the discussions today, have definitely set some things in my mind around the West and China, and reverse back to before I even started looking into China properly. I had completely different mindset on the whole thing.
Yeah,
it all makes sense. What's happening in the world right now, it makes sense. And there's no one to blame because it's just a way of the world.
Yeah, my mind's been broadened, I feel, after doing this.
So, ni hao.
Yeah, ni hao. Well, opposite of ni hao, whatever that is.
What is that, Aaron? What's goodbye? You know?
Ni hao, we'll just say it, and treat it as goodbye. Thank you for watching.
All right.
All right.
Everyone.
Nice one, boys.
Thanks.
See you later.